Hi writer and book lover friends. We are here today, or I'm here today at Barnes & Noble, and I'm not sure what kind of books I'm looking for, but I will know by the time the video is made. So thank you for watching, and I'm sure by the title I know what it is, but right now, at this moment, I know that I'm looking for Marie Forleo's book, Everything is Figureoutable. It came out in hardcover a year or two ago, and we'll find out, we'll look at the credits page if we can find it and see exactly when it came out in hardcover. It's now in paperback and is a bestseller in paperback. And I don't know if it's a business book or a self-help book. I know that Marie Forleo does a lot of stuff, helping people with their business, but a lot of times those books can be business or motivational, which is self-help. So we're going to go find out and see. Another thing I'm curious about, I was in a writer's challenge held by Hay House, and Hay House is a large publisher that was founded by Louise Hay in the 60s or 70s, I'm not sure exactly when, and they publish a lot of memoir and self-development books and health books and maybe some novels. I'm not sure if they're doing novels yet. I'm sure they will eventually. Actually, I do think they're doing some novels. And so I want to see if they're here. I do think that they are shelved in a chain store. Okay, someone drove up right next to me and was right here, so I was distracted for a minute. It is a little weird talking on my phone when people might be able to see me, so, but hey, I can barrel through. So I'm going to see if I can find some Hay House books. I'm just curious. They're a big publisher, but are they here? One thing that's going on right now in the chain stores and maybe in independent stores is, so at Christmas time, in October to December, the stores stock up really heavily on Christmas. We used to call it Coots, Christmas Order Up-Tos. And so they fill the stores with books for the holiday season, obviously. And then after the first of the year, the returns start. So they return books that didn't sell, that are older, and there's all sorts of things that go into deciding which books to return, and I won't get into that this minute. But anyway, so the selection here, for you guys to know, the selection here is going to be thinner than it was a month or two ago when we started this process of going to the bookstore and looking at books. So that does affect what we can find. It affects you as a reader. You're going to find even more of the popular mass market bestseller books or classics. And so that's just something to be aware of. So let's get inside and see if we can find Everything is Figureoutable and where it's shelved. So I found Marie Forleo's book here on this end cap, and it's right here. So we'll take a look at this. Everything is Figureoutable, Marie Forleo, so it's in self-help. The publisher is Forleo Penguin, so one of the big guys, and paperback, $17, and this is basically her book of inspiration and motivation based on what her mother told her. Nothing in life is that complicated. You can do whatever you set your mind to. If you roll up your sleeves, get in there and do it. Everything is figureoutable. So whether with work or addiction or relationship, this book would be appropriate. So yeah, everything, it's in paperback. Let's see when it came out in hardcover. Lots of testimonials here, obviously, because it's been out for a while. And first published in hardcover in 2019. Paperback published in 2020, which I think was last month, December. I'm filming this in January. So let's see what it looks like on the inside. In self-help, you can do a couple of different things when it comes to design, and they seem to have added some extra color. You've got this frame around the pages here. At the end of each chapter, it looks like. Let's see how many chapters she has. It's a pretty good page count. She's got 10 chapters, so that's about normal, and then the epilogue is another chapter. And it's over 283 pages, so again, it's in that sweet spot between 250 and 350. She does have end notes and then some stuff in an appendix. She's got a lot of information in here. It's a pretty good sized book. It's a 5.5 by 8.5 roughly size, not 6 by 9, and it's got this little thing, doohickey, which is not my favorite. I've tried to look up what this is called to find out what kind of cover this is, where it doesn't go full to the end. Now, I want to point out something. So we have here that Elizabeth Gilbert gave her a blurb, and up here Glennon Doyle gave her a blurb. So I was listening to a podcast with Elizabeth Gilbert and Marie Forleo talking about writing, and Elizabeth Gilbert kind of looked over Marie's manuscript before she submitted it and gave her, they say in the podcast, she cut out the first 20 to 30 pages. And Elizabeth Gilbert also looked over Glennon Doyle's. So they know each other. That's what happens a lot when you get blurbs. It's from people you know or that the publisher knows. So, but blurbs are helpful. People say, oh, blurbs, they're not, authentic. Well, they kind of are. And people do care who else, it just all goes together to make a package. Keywords, the names, everything that's on it. I also want to talk about this end cap, because an end cap is something that the publishers that are on here paid for these books to be on this display. And I know that because this sign here was done at the corporate office, created this sign. So this was planned ahead, and this has to be planned months in advance. So let's see which publishers are here. So we've got, I looked this one up. Oh, this is Sourcebooks. Okay, Sourcebooks is a large publisher, but not one of the top 5, not one of the big ones. A big one, but not one of the big ones. How to Talk to Anyone is McGraw-Hill, so they're one of the big ones. And then The Power of Ritual is Harper, and they're one of the big ones. So, and then we saw Everything is Figureoutable is Penguin. So yeah, so it does cost money to be on an end cap. Oh, also wanted to look at what these are about. So the Get To Principle, a simple technique to create instant joy, how to get happy, get going, and get to it in life. This is interesting because I've been with some people talking about joy in recent days and how to have joy in their daily life. This is a very visually pleasing book. See all the photographs. This is not cheap to produce. This was probably printed overseas, China or Korea or India. Kind of looks a lot like, how blogs have a lot of pictures to them, or magazine articles. This is kind of a new development in books. I mean, a lot of health books have done this for quite a long time. But yeah, a lot of color in here. But that makes sense because the book is about joy, so you want it to be a joyful book. So again, the package is important. The design is important. Orange is a joyful color. This author has done a number of books on happiness. So here, Unlock the Secret to True Happiness. Mindset Gets a Makeover. Transform your day-to-day with a simple approach to goal-setting, happiness, and eliminating stress. So the way you think about your actions is the way life is experienced. So hardcover, $16.99, might be a good read. It looks like it would be a kind of fast read because the pictures and things do kind of bulk it up a little bit. So it might not take too long to read if you're in a hurry. So How to Talk to Anyone, Little Tricks for Big Success in Relationships. That's pretty self-explanatory. And by McGraw-Hill, which generally does business books, but they do some self-help as well. Become a master communicator and succeed in life, love, and business. All right, pretty thick, pretty high word count, page count here. This one is 300 and something. Yep, nearly 350. So 345, 347, 348. The Power of Ritual. Turning Everyday Activities into Soulful Practices by Casper Turkule. So that one seems kind of self-explanatory too. How we find connection today has changed. I wonder if this was written after COVID. He's the podcast Harry Potter and the Sacred Text. draws from scientific studies and diverse spiritual traditions to show how turning everyday activities into intentional rituals can transform our lives. Interesting podcast. So looking at ritual, this is a very cleanly designed book. I like clean design. I don't like all the colors and the little doohickeys and the sidebars. And not very many chapters, because look how far we are in. We're already into chapter 3. So this has got a lot of content, actually, because there's not things taking up space in the book. Interesting. Let's see how many chapters. Yeah, 5 chapters. But we're at 200 and something pages. 205 pages, plus a couple extras, 208 pages. Nice. See, this is a book, of the ones I just saw, this is probably the one I would choose, other than Marie Forleo's, because it just looks like a clean read, easy read. But see, that's just me. So other people, probably some of you watching, are like, nah, that looks boring. Interesting. All right, looking for Hay House books, and I found one here, Hay House, The Brain Fog. Looks very nice, good cover, good title, nice and large. Dr. Mike Dow, so you can read it if you're looking at it on a screen. And the Brain Fog Fix is stress preventing you from enjoying your daily life. Many of the foods we eat and the habits we have do not support our brains. So how to fix brain fog, $17.99. And this looks like it's probably going to be a nice clean layout. Oh, I'm wrong. So we've got a lot of, so we have a little tracker, day 3, day 7, so day by day. Actually, it makes sense that it's going to be designed with a lot of headers and bolds and bullet points and everything for their program overview, easier to read. Mommy brain. Here it's a little bit cleaner than at the end where there's all these charts and graphs, so a little easier to read and get through. But you could argue that you want to break it up if people have brain fog. They want to read in smaller chunks of information. So that's something to consider if you're designing your own books or working with someone to design your own books. Okay, besides that one, there's Joe Dispenza is with Hay House, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. So we know about that. So then I started looking. There's actually quite a variety of publishers within self-development. So Gallery is actually, I looked them up, they're under one of the big guys. Adams Media is somewhat independent, but maybe under one of the big guys. Sterling has been around for a while, they're independent. They do more designed, pretty books. Then we've got Sounds True, which is a new age, Body, Mind, Spirit. So here's one that is a very small publisher, not very, very small, but a small publisher. Grief One Day at a Time, 365 Meditations to help you heal after loss. So what I want to point out is if you're self-publishing or doing something small, these are helpful ways to get started. So he's got a little meditation or thought for each day. This is real pretty because it's in purple and black, so it's 2 colors, so that's not too hard to do to print if you're going to print POD, print on demand. It'd be cheaper to print this overseas, obviously, but then you got to print a few thousand copies. So that's just an idea to keep in mind if you're thinking about doing something in the self-help area. You could start with a meditations book, and they don't have to be 365 meditations. That's just what they chose for this particular book. And this publisher is Companion, so they're part of the Center for Loss and Life Transition. So that's an organization that's doing publishing, and like I've told many of you, that there's a lot of publishers like that who do that. Shambhala is another Body, Mind, Spirit. What is this? Oh, that doesn't belong here. This is a book about collecting money. That doesn't go here. But we'll just leave it. Here's another Hay House. Dr. Wayne Dyer is a big Hay House author. Another Hay House, Wayne Dyer. So we've got Thomas Nelson. So we do have Christian publishers in the self-help personal growth field, books section. the joy of missing out. I love that. Instead of the fear of missing out, the joy of missing out. Yeah, that sounds good. Nelson Books, $18.99, paperback. And again, you can see how it's designed. So you've got some graphic interest in here throughout. And let's see how many chapters they have. Also known as JOMO. So she's got 4 sections in 12 chapters. So that's a good way to organize your book. And look at this, she's got it even more organized. Pursue discovery, discover, 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 find clarity, clarify, clarify, clarify. That's really clear and helpful. Create simplicity. So that's a great outline of what's in the book. So if you're writing a book, that's what you can start with, is nailing down your outline. Let's see what her page count is. Of course, they're not going to put page numbers in the back here. So more than 200, so around 200 pages, it looks like, a little bit over 200 pages. So that's interesting. Continuing the Elizabeth Gilbert theme, here's Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic. I'm actually in a book club right now that's reading this book. I've read it in the past on audio. Elizabeth Gilbert actually narrates her own audiobook. This is a really good book. But what's interesting, so on the podcast where I heard Marie Forleo and Elizabeth Gilbert talking about writing books, they asked Elizabeth Gilbert about her page counts because her novels are quite long. And she said Big Magic was a little book, was a small book. Okay, so let's look at this and see, is it too small? So again, they've got it in the sweet spot. So it is, we've got some little ads of all her other books back here, acknowledgements. 272 pages, so she's between the 250 to 350 page count, but she goes on the lower side of it, so 272 pages, though it could be smaller and she'd still be okay. You can see they actually have laid it out very nicely. They don't have huge margins. The margins are generous, but they're not super huge, and the line spacing is generous, but it's not noticeably so. So they did a good job of the design and the layout here. I do notice quite a bit of spacing between the sections here, if you look. Let's see. So they also do, okay, so we've got this takes up space here where so you have this color here, or just whatever this is with the stars. One word for the next section. So that can take up space. That's 2 pages right there per section name. But every little bit counts. So they really did a good job of laying this out. Let's see how many chapters she has. Okay, they're in parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 parts. So here's another book with no chapters. Remember we did that in another video. I've got a book with no chapters, and here's a book with no chapters. So when we look in the chapters, then we see that she's just talking about, so it's a series of essays almost. So entitlement, a little essay, under permission, originality versus authenticity, under permission, motives. So again, this isn't like a bunch of solving of it's not methods, it's not steps, it's not a process, it's not tools, it's essays on various things around creativity. So it would take a deeper dive into this to see how she's organized the content. I can tell you it's probably very well organized because it is Elizabeth Gilbert. But that's another interesting way. So if you're wanting to do a book on creativity or joy or something along those lines, this might be a good model for you as an inspiration book and as a book to look at for structuring your own book. So really interesting. So it is Penguin Random House. I would guess that she's got the same publisher for all her books. Interesting, this little, I don't know if you can see that. The color doesn't bleed all the way to the edge. That's just a printer error. It's not a big deal, really. $17 in paperback. And another thing I wanted to point out was her sections are not the same size. So see where the black lines are? The black line is at each section. So this middle section is quite large. Oh, nope, that's a section we couldn't see. So they are kind of about the same size, but not exactly. Very interesting. Oh, the only thing I wanted to see was when was it originally published. Let's see if we can find that out. This one is 2015. Okay, they don't say when the hardcover came out. Oh, there it is. Yeah, hardcover September 2015, paperback September 2016. Yeah, so cool. Got to point this book out, which was right next to Elizabeth Gilbert's Forest Bathing. Doesn't that sound like a cool topic? A Start Here guide for beginners, published by St. Martin's, and Health and Happiness through the Japanese practice of Shinran-yoku. I'm probably saying it wrong. The art and science of forest bathing. So spending time in the forest is a way to find peace and rejuvenation to promote health. We could all use that right now, couldn't we? So restoring vitamin D, balancing your microbiome, mental and emotional rewards, tap deeply into your 5 senses. This sounds cool. $14.99, St. Martin's. And, oh, tiny text. Let's see, how many pages? 121 pages. Okay, so here's a thinner book, but it's pretty packed because look, kind of tiny font. Yeah, see, compare this to what we were looking at in Big Magic, and this is, I would argue they could have gone a little higher on the font size to make it easier to read, but very clean layout, so interesting. Yeah, but a fun topic. Okay, that was fun. I could have stayed looking longer and longer at all the different publishers within the self-help section. So there's so many different publishers in there. So what you didn't see, and maybe next time I'll film it, I was in the new releases section of the bookstore, and all of the books in there, all but maybe one, were from the top five publishers. And, you know, it is what it is. This is a chain store, and it's going to sell and stock mostly the big publishers. But when you're wanting to see all the other publishers that are out there, it's kind of frustrating. So when I went into the self-help section looking for Hay House books, and I did find Hay House, found a number of them. There were even more than I showed. There's so many other publishers there. There's big and small publishers. There's independents of all different sizes. And there was Page 2 Books, which is out of Canada. So self-help is a great, if that's the kind of book you're wanting to write and you want to find a traditional publisher, don't feel like you have to get a top big 5 publisher to publish your book. You can go through one of the independent publishers or a smaller press. That's also a good place to look to get ideas for designing your book and for organizing it. But again, if you're self-help, we've talked before about memoir, there's teaching memoir where you are speaking to the readers sometimes and telling your story, so it's kind of self-help and memoir. Then there's straight memoir that should read like a novel and have a story arc. So you are probably not going to organize your memoir in the same way as a self-help if you're doing a straight, memoir. So that was interesting to see. Anyway, just the different ways, different types of publishers there. The end cap, talked about the end cap and how that is paid. Publishers pay to be on the end cap and to have special placement in a bookstore. I've mentioned that before. All of the table displays are going to be paid for by the publisher. Now, there will come points in some stores. I worked in a store that had more end caps and display spaces than most Barnes & Nobles, and so I, as the manager in charge of that, would create displays that went with what our store needed. But again, then I would pull books off the shelf that went with whatever the theme was. But in general, all of the books that you're going to see displayed have been paid for by a publisher. So if you are publishing your own books and you're like, why can't I get a display in a bookstore? You can. You got to just pay for it. So even that window display that I like to show in the stories, which you don't see in this video, but I show on the Instagram stories, I kind of keep track of the main window display and what's changing there, and those are novels right now that are all best-selling novels or best-selling authors. and those are definitely paid for. They're not something that are just random. Let's see, what else did we look at? So we looked at Marie Forleo's book was in self-help, not in business, like I was kind of hoping. Then we found Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic, and then some other fun books to look at too. So yeah, interesting to see the different designs in the books. And you design your book the way you like. People like books designed in different ways. I personally like a very clean feel. I feel like I can read it faster if I don't have things stopping me as I go and turn the pages. But some content works better and is easier to read if it's broken up. Some people just want to have smaller chunks of content. So it just depends on the topic and your reader. You have to know your reader. And it also is going to depend on the publisher. Some publishers tend to do more of that kind of stuff than other publishers as well. The only other thing I wanted to point out was looking at how a book is organized. Like, look at how Big Magic is just essays, basically, is a collection of essays. So those can be written. If you're going to write a book like that, you can write them in any order and then put them in the order that makes sense. So there are a lot of books that are actually collections of essays, and in the Publisher in Your Pocket Facebook group, we've been talking about that and talking about how to get your material together if you are writing a book, and that you don't have to write a book from beginning to end the way it's going to be. You may think you're writing beginning to end, and then you're going to change it around. So don't even worry about what's the beginning, what's the end, especially for a self-help book. But even if you're writing a novel, just get the story out, and if you jump around in the story as you are getting your zero draft, that's fine. Do that. Whatever you can do to get the story out. Okay, I could go on and on, but it's getting hot in the car. It is here in Florida, and I don't have the air conditioning on, so I'm going to stop. But thank you for watching. Subscribe and ring the bell, and just thank you for being here. Let me know what you thought, if you've read any of the books. What about that forest bathing book? Have you ever read anything like that? I know there's a lot more talk about getting out in nature now that we're in the middle of the pandemic and we need something to help us. But forest bathing sounds really fun. There's a forest here in Florida that might be fun to go to. But I've heard even just standing barefoot on the ground is helpful. So if you can't get to a forest, maybe try that. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you thought. If you've read any of these books and what you thought of those, and tell a writer friend or a book friend about the Publisher in Your Pocket YouTube, and I'll see you next time.